President Trump, after a long period of consideration, is getting rid of his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who came in to the job with an incredible reputation. When President Trump named him national security advisor, many people said this was a great sign that Trump 2.0 was picking adults and pros. Well, the decision to get rid of Waltz has been percolating for a long time. You'll recall that he led that Signal chat group that caused so much controversy and raised questions about his competence. Ironically, I think that controversy helped keep Waltz in his job for longer, because President Trump didn't want to give a scalp to those like Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic, who were saying that what Waltz did violated all sensible procedures. What's been going on behind the scenes, and I've been reporting on this for several weeks, is that people in the national security part of the administration, at the State Department, elsewhere in the White House, at the National Economic Council, people connected to at the highest levels of the West Wing, it wasn't about ideology. It wasn't the question of whether Waltz was too neocon or wasn't on the right side of issues. It was about process and competence. People thought he was too concerned about being in charge and not running a tight ship. The National Security Council staff is not very big. They sit right in the West Wing near the president. And Waltz was considered to be simply not up to the job of managing that daily flow of information. You've got embassies around the world. You've got the Pentagon, the State Department, the Treasury's involved in national security. That was another building, another part of the Trump administration that just said, Waltz simply just can't do the job. Surprising. Military background, senior intelligence positions on Capitol Hill as a Florida congressman, very well regarded. But this was seen as a failure even before Signalgate. People were telling me he's not going to be long for the job. The reason that this has been delayed, besides the president not wanting to give the media the satisfaction of getting rid of his national security advisor, is they need someone to take the job. And they've had a difficulty finding someone. They considered a guy from the State Department, Marco Rubio's number 2. He's doing such a good job. He's got job lock. I feel bad for the guy because I think he'd probably like to be national security advisor, but he's not going to get the job, I'm told, because Rubio says no, he's too valuable helping run the State Department. The person who is front and center to potentially get the job is Steve Witkoff. Now, this is some reporting that I think I'm ahead on also about where this stands. Steve Witkoff is a developer. He's a businessman. He's a friend of Trump's, and he is one of the surprises of this term. He's given a senior job. He's basically the negotiator for everything. First, he's negotiating on the Middle East, then he was negotiating on Russia and Ukraine. And his capacity to do this job is celebrated in some cases. They say he's a guy who can get stuff done. He's got the confidence of the president. He's met with Putin several times, first senior official like that since the war started. So that's like the glass half full view of Witkoff. But there are a lot of people in not just deep state diplomats and liberals. There are a lot of people in the government who are very supportive of the president's agenda, who think Witkoff is in totally over his head. So yesterday, before I got wind of the replacement plan with the national security advisor, a story popped up in the New York Post. Very negative story about Witkoff. Strange place for it to be. The New York Post is not normally doing deep dives on this kind of thing, and had filled with all these negative quotes, going really hard at Witkoff, saying Steve Witkoff is completely unqualified to be at the highest level of American national security. He's doing irresponsible things. He's going to meetings with Putin without his own translator, not really understanding how to do it. It seemed to me like an effort to try to get Witkoff, at the time, to try to get Witkoff out of these senior negotiating roles. In fact, what I'm now told is that story was planted by people who had wind of the fact that Trump was about to replace Waltz with Witkoff and want to stop him from getting the job. Now, he's got a lot of supporters in the West Wing. There are a lot of people who think he's doing a great job and would be fine having him as be national security advisor. But there are other people who don't want it to happen. The president faced a choice whether to delay the decision to get rid of Waltz, which again was being called for by lots of people around him, until they could find a candidate, or fire him and leave the job basically open, or have Waltz do it until they find the replacement and try to find a replacement. This is so common, not just for Donald Trump, who's not the best at personnel, but for any president, which is, okay, we got to get rid of person X, but we don't have the replacement. So I think what happened today, and I'm not sure about this because I didn't ask my sources, but I confirmed this story after the initial tip really easily, right? So for a reporter, normally you get a tip. Sometimes it can take hours, sometimes days to get a second source. I got my second and third source almost as quick as I could dial up some additional people. Here's what I think happened. It's my speculation, but I think I'm right. The people who wanted Waltz out and don't want Witkoff in couldn't come up with another candidate, but they wanted Waltz out. They didn't want to let the president change his mind, because sometimes Donald Trump will change his mind. And so what I think happened is they said, let's put out the story that Waltz is gone. That'll force the president's hand. The president won't have the excuse of saying, well, I can't get rid of him until we have the replacement. And so I'm not saying I was used. I might have been rented to say, let's put this out. Let's force the president to do what he's committed to doing, getting rid of Waltz, and then he'll find someone. I don't know whether Witkoff's going to end up in the job. Based on this reporting I've done so far, I don't think so. I think he's got some strong supporters, but I think there's some opposition. But the important thing is that the president's, either his hand was forced or people didn't want to wait around to see. Didn't want to wait around to see whether he would follow through, because sometimes Donald Trump follows through on personnel stuff and sometimes he doesn't.